Hey guys, today we're going to look at how do we solve equations that have fractions in them. And we have looked at this a little bit already, but now we're going to kind of expand and say, okay, instead of just any equation or any fraction, we're going to have polynomials in our denominators, okay? So as always, make sure that you date the top of your notes. And then the title for today's notes are solving fractional equations. So what we're going to do today is we are going to write down the steps on, step 1, 2, 3, 4. How do we solve these equations? And then we're going to do a couple examples where we review it and go over it. Okay, so I'm going to erase this. Let's go down. Okay, so first step, which has been the same step for the last couple notes that we've taken, right? First thing you want to do is you want to factor everything. I wasn't lying when I said that this unit had a lot of factoring, okay? We want to make sure that we feel really good about factoring. Okay, so we're going to factor everything. I want everything in factored form. The second thing we're going to do is we are going to multiply every term by each of the denominators. There's only one denominator, then we only have to multiply it once. If there's more than one denominator, then we're going to multiply it twice, right? Or 3 times, or whatever. We're going to multiply every term by each of the denominators. Third step is nice and easy, right? Once you no longer have fractions, so you should get to a point where you no longer have fractions in your equations. So once you no longer have fractions, you're just going to simplify and solve. It's just going to be a normal equation that we know how to solve. We're going to simplify and solve. And then the last step is, remember, we're not allowed to have 0 on the bottom of a fraction, right? So we are going to plug in the answer to make sure it doesn't give you 0 on the bottom. Right? Not allowed to have 0 on the bottom of a fraction. So I just need to make sure that whatever answer I get, if I plug it in, it doesn't give me 0. So these are the basic steps: factor, multiply, solve, solve, solve. We're going to do 2 examples here just showing how this works, and then you should be good to go. We have looked at this quite a bit already. So we have done this before. So hopefully it doesn't look too scary. Okay, so we are going to solve 3x over x plus 7 minus 8 over x plus 7 equals negative 23 over x plus 7. And again, normally I would just work off the problem that I'm given, but for the sake of notes, I want you to be able to see the original problem and see what we're doing to it. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this problem again right underneath. So I am not doing anything to this except just writing it again. Okay, so step 1 says to factor everything. Well, there's nothing in here that needs to be factored. Everything is already factored, so I should be good to go. Step 2 then says to multiply by the denominator. Right now, all of my denominators are the same, So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply every single term by my denominator. I like to write it on the left because then it doesn't look like an exponent on the right, you know? So if I have an x plus 7 on top and an x plus 7 on bottom, those cancel. And I'm just left with 3x. Right? If I have an x plus 7 on top and bottom, right? Top and bottom, they cancel. So I'm left with minus 8 equals, and then these cancel, and I'm left with negative 23. So in this case, I only had to multiply once because all of my denominators were the same. Now I have an equation with no fractions, and so I can just solve, right? We can add 8, I get 3x is equal to negative 15, divide by 3, and I get x is equal to negative 5. Okay, then the question is, does x equal negative 5 give you 0? 0 on the bottom, right? So that's the question then, now that we have what x is equal. So if I plug it in, x plus 7, well, negative 5 plus 7 is 2. So I don't get 0 on the bottom. Okay, so this is my answer. Okay, so I can say that x minus 5 is my answer. If the value does give you 0 on the bottom, then we just say no solution. Okay, so then there's no number that would work. Let's look at another example. So our second example here is I want to solve 2 over 5x minus 40 plus 4 over 5 equals 6 over x minus 8. Okay, so my first step is I need to factor everything, right? So step 1, so I have 2 over 5 minus 40 factors to 5 times x minus 8. 4/5 does not factor, and neither does 6 over x minus 8. But I was able to factor this. Okay, then step 2, I need to multiply by denominator. So here I have two denominators, right? I have a 5 and I have an x minus 8. So I have two different pieces of a denominator. And so I'm going to have to multiply twice. And it doesn't matter which one you do first. So let's just do the 5 first. So I'm going to multiply every single term by 5. Okay? So what happens is if I have a 5 on top and on bottom, they cancel. So here I'm left with 2 over x minus 8 because they canceled, right? Here I have a 5 on top and a 5 on bottom, so they cancel. And so I'm left with plus 4. There's no more fraction. The 5 on the bottom is gone. And then here, nothing cancels. Do we see that? There's no 5 on bottom. So then I end up just multiplying the top by that 5. So I get 30 over x minus 8. So the denominator stays the same. I just multiply the 5 times 6. Okay. Now I still have a denominator. Now I have a denominator of x minus 8. So I am going to have to multiply every single term by x minus 8. Okay. So these guys cancel. And I'm just left with 2. So this is kind of step 2. Sorry. There you go. Okay. Here, nothing cancels, right? So I distribute the 4. So I'm left with 4. Let's just write 4 times x minus 8, and then we can distribute it that way. And then my last term, these x minus 8s get to cancel. And so I'm left with just 30. So hopefully that makes sense on how we're getting rid of those denominators. And now I have no more fractions, so that's step 3, right? No more fractions, I just simplify and solve. So I have 2 plus 4x minus 32 equals 30. I can combine the 2 and 32, so 4x minus 30 equals 30. Add 30 to both sides, and I'm left with 4x equals 60. Divide by 4, and I get x equals 15. So then the question is, if I plug 15 back in, do I get 0? Well, the only place I can plug a 15 in is this x minus 8, and 15 minus 8 is not 0, right? So this works. That is my answer. So that's all we're doing, and then this section is just factoring and then multiplying by the denominators so we can get an equation that has no more fractions, and then we're just able to solve all the way down. You guys do have some practice on this. If you have any questions or you need help, reach out, and I'll see you next class.